Welcome to Secret Affairs. I never believed houses had memories. Not until the day I moved into the one that remembered me before I ever stepped inside. It was supposed to be a simple, fresh start. New neighborhood, new walls, new routines to bury the old ones. Nothing about it felt supernatural or strange at first. It was just quiet. It's too quiet in a way that made the silence feel intentional, like it was waiting for me to speak before it did. The first thing I noticed wasn't the house itself. It was the hallway. Mirror, tall, narrow, placed at an angle facing the front door for no apparent reason. Nothing remarkable, till I realized something was wrong with my reflection. Not scary, wrong, not distorted, just delayed. A fraction of a second, but enough to register. When I raised my hand, the reflection followed not instantly, not fluidly, but like it had to remember what I did first. I blamed exhaustion, stress, the kind of burnout you can't medicate. I didn't know this was the house's first greeting. The second came the next morning. I woke up around 4:17 a.m. not because I wanted to, but because the sound of footsteps traveled across the living room floor with the slow, deliberate weight of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Only one problem. I lived alone. I didn't panic. Some part of me refused to. My mind rushed to the usual excuses: old pipes, wood contracting, neighborhood noise. But these weren't random creaks. These were steps. Human, heavy, consistent. They stopped precisely outside my bedroom door. And then a whisper. Not a voice, not words. Just the sound of fabric shifting, like someone had leaned against the door to listen. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. Because I knew deep in the part of the brain that still remembers fear from childhood that the thing on the other side was there to harm me. It was waiting, listening, learning. The house wasn't haunted. It was observant. By the third day, I began noticing patterns, whispers in the vents, shadows in places light never reached, doors left slightly open after I shut them. The smell of someone else's perfume lingering in rooms I rarely entered. Not floral, not sweet. More like cold metal and faint smoke, like the scent of a person who'd been gone a long time but hadn't quite left. The house wasn't trying to scare me. It was studying me. It's watching every decision, every hesitation, every moment of silence between my thoughts. And then it began responding. Not with voices, with choices. Doors that opened by themselves when I approached. Lights that dimmed when my anxiety rose. A floorboard that creaked only when I lied to myself or out loud. The house grew attuned to me the way a person does. And that's when he entered the story. Not a friend, not a relative, not anyone tied to me emotionally. It's just a neighbor who lived across the street, a quiet young man who hardly spoke, hardly looked up, hardly existed in anyone's version of reality except his own. But the house noticed him long before I did. It reacted to him. Every time he walked past my window, the temperature in the hallway shifted. Every time he glanced at the house from across the street, the mirror in the living room seemed to tighten, as if adjusting to a different presence. The house didn't like him. And when a house doesn't like someone, it warns you, subtly at first, then urgently, then unmistakably. The night it first tried to warn me properly, I understood something chilling. The house wasn't haunted by a spirit. The house was haunted by a memory, and that memory had something to do with him. The warning began quietly, so quietly that if I had already been listening for the house's behavior, I might have brushed it off as nothing. 'Twas nearly 8 p.m. I had left the kitchen window slightly open to let the air circulate. Outside, the neighborhood was calm. In that eerie suburban way, houses lined up like obedient soldiers, each pretending not to watch the others. I was making tea when I heard it. 3 taps, soft, deliberate, measured, not on the door, not on the walls, but inside the house, somewhere near the living room mirror. Tap, tap, tap. I knew immediately it wasn't random. The pattern was too rhythmic, too intelligent. I set the cup down and walked toward the living room. As I approached, the mirror stood tall and still, like a patient sentinel. Nothing seemed out of place, yet the air around it felt colder, denser, like it was holding itself together. Then I saw it. Not a figure, not a shadow. Not anything obviously supernatural, just a shift. A tightening of the mirror's surface, like ripples in water after something moves beneath it. And then a reflection appeared behind me. Not mine, not human. More like a silhouette, solid, tall, unmoving, standing in the exact place in the hallway where the neighbor usually paused on mornings he left for work. But I was alone. I turned around. Nothing. When I faced the mirror again, the reflection was gone. The house wasn't trying to scare me, was trying to show me something, warn me of something connected to him. I stepped closer, and the room temperature dropped sharply, an unmistakable signal. I whispered quietly, as though the house could hear me. "What do you want me to know?" No response. But I didn't need one, because the silence shifted. It wasn't empty anymore, it was full of intention. The house was thinking, choosing. Seconds later, the hallway light flickered twice slow. Intentional, then went dark. A moment later, knock. This time, it came from outside. 3 knocks, tap, tap. Same rhythm, same pace, but from the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I approached slowly, peeking through the peephole. And there he was, the neighbor, standing perfectly still on my porch, hands in his pockets, eyes not on me but on the house, like he wasn't here to see me at all. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't tense, he wasn't even acknowledging the door, studying the house, inspecting it. Like he'd seen it before, like he recognized it. My pulse quickened. Something in me whispered, "Don't open the door." The house agreed. The doorknob turned icy under my hand, as if freezing me out, urging stop. But the neighbor finally looked at the peephole. Directly at it, directly at me. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes I couldn't name. Not anger, not curiosity, not familiarity, something deeper, older, a kind of recognition that made no sense for a stranger. He lifted his hand slowly, tap, 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 same rhythm as inside the house. Perfectly matched, the house reacted before I could. Every light in the hallway flickered violently, as though rejecting his presence. The mirror trembled not visibly, but energetically, like it was under pressure. The message was clear: do not let him in. I stepped back from the door, and the house seemed to exhale in relief. But outside, the neighbor tilted his head slightly, as though listening to something I couldn't hear. Then he whispered, barely audible through the door, "You finally moved in." He didn't knock again. He didn't wait. He simply walked away into the darkness, as if he knew exactly what he deduned in, exactly what the house was trying to hide from me. That night, I barely slept. And for the first time since I moved in, I realized the house